one of the advantages of being a veteran, which is having a community and sticking together. So, um, Mike, do you want to? Oh, you've got the recording started. Awesome. All right. Thank you very much. Les, do you want to show us your presentation and tell us about what your topic is tonight?
Yeah, let me go ahead and kick right into it. So as I share my screen and get set up, and hopefully I can replicate what I just did 2 seconds ago, right? I'd just like to start off in saying thanks. I think this is always a great forum to, present, share ideas and get feedback, but I think we always get stronger. So can someone just confirm that you can see a screen so I don't start talking and no one can see anything?
Yep, absolutely.
Perfect. So here's something that again has always struck me as interesting, because when I have conversation with folks, it's always about how do I best leverage my numbers and resumes, networking and interviews, or even promotions, and when folks get a job. So I thought it'd be great to share some of the items I think are most impactful. And like always, if you have questions, comments, and concerns, or things that just throw out there, please do. I always welcome it. I think it's great that we have multiple experts that contribute on this call, and it really does help have that. So I'll be going through some of the slides. I don't always see the the talking points pop up. So again, if you have a question or something, just jump in, interrupt me if you need be, or so forth. So, but again, today I want to cover down on strength in numbers. And again, let me go through and maybe share some helpful insights about some key questions and concerns that I've kind of gathered over the last 5 years. I think these elements have helped folks really shape their approach and leverage their position in a lot of cases. And again, the feedback is folks have found this very successful. So the 4 areas that I want to cover down on today, and again, share out, are, when I talked about your numbers, right, in previous episodes, if you will, the linking and alignment. I think that, we could always get better at that. The second piece is, the game. Why are these numbers important, and for what reasons? I do believe that veterans have a unique value that's important about their numbers, and I want to share some powerful numbers, right? So again, like I've said before, usually when I give these talks, I try to keep it focused and narrow. But again, these can spark many conversations, and I hope you pick these up on meetings or one-on-ones or networking outside. So let's just jump right into it, right? So you've probably seen this from my previous talk, and again, you can revisit on YouTube, which is a fantastic service that again, Eagle Group has, and thanks to the folks that put that together. Getting paid what you're worth, and I talked about specific numbers and that. I'm not going to go through that again, but for folks that may be seeing this for the first time, again, these are numbers that I would consider to be strong. It might be like a quick sheet. But these are, often used in conversation, resumes, networking, and interviews, right? I'll go through a lot of these further on when we apply some of the points today. But remember, these are like anchor points, right? And when you're having conversations or even handing something to somebody else, it ensures you're rememberable, right? And again, it seems simple enough, right? That, I've got this, I've spent years on, no, probably not years, but maybe a lot of time on this, right? To get this just right. But I always felt like I had a gap in explaining my story and value, right? And, discussing with others, I soon found out that they kind of shared the same thing. So again, when I move forward with this, my question is, right, how do I build out my story and value to effectively communicate these numbers? And I always asked, why? Why was there a slight disconnect between what maybe I was explaining and what was being interpreted? And really, 5 years ago, I heard Simon Sinek explain this in a way that made perfect sense to me. He shared a concept of game theory, and essentially, this is what it is, right? You have two types of games. The first being finite games, right? And you can think of like football, basketball, the players are known, there's fixed rules, the game ends at a certain point, there's winners and losers. And it really is what's best for me. And those numbers focus on, followers, fans, dollars, and so forth. But then there's also infinite games in this game theory where the players are known and unknown. There's no agreed upon rules. The games never end. There's really no such thing as winning, but you do progress, and you may want to survive. You think more about what's best for others and focus on legacy. So again, the reason why this really resonated with me was I think that for me, I've always known that, when certain things start and stop, okay, that makes sense. But in the military, I mean, like, it just goes on and on. And sometimes it's boredom, right? Let's just go face it. Or hurry up and waits, right? But there's a lot of infinite pieces there. And when you start trying to plug in those numbers or your experience in that, how does that really equate? And when you do explain it, does it really resonate with, the receiver of that information? But I do, I had a sense of feeling that the veteran numbers and the things that we earn per se are unique, right? And if, I had to explain it, I would take really this here and say, from an infinite standpoint, we were taught, right, either through boot camp or through however many years of service and really through experience and so forth, right? For the Marines, there was really two primary items: mission accomplishment and troop welfare. I mean, we could tack up our numbers and so forth to that. And for the most part, I would say all the services are doing a fantastic job at the infinite game, staying relevant, upholding the Constitution, and being obviously where they need to when they need to be there, right? But then when we talk about the transition in the finite world, well, it's not always this case, but for the majority, businesses look at these three areas, right? How they grow revenues, how they increase throughput, and how they decrease expenses. And whether or not you look at some of these brands and they have positioned themselves for the future, they still report to stakeholders and shareholders, right? These three main items, and predominantly they get judged on them. So then when I look at this, I go, well, the transition from this military mindset to the business mindset is always easy. I think that, from an increased throughput, we can definitely attack that. And that may be one of the best options when you're talking about leadership for veterans and them landing in the business world. Decrease expenses, I can say that's reasonably. Grow revenues, I'm not sure many folks have a billet or a particular role where they did that. The higher you go up in rank, obviously you get exposed to those contracts and so forth. But I also say that maybe recruiters can do well in the grow revenues, especially the sales, right? We've heard folks talked about being hunters and so forth. But again, I think that when you look at numbers and then that aspect, it's definitely interesting when we talk about selflessness and the greater good. But I do believe that veterans can do both. And again, the application of this then goes to, all right, but so what numbers do you use? Right? And it's taken me a little bit to curate this list, both through trial and error, both from learning from others. But last year, I managed about 29 billion at US Bank, and I used every one of these. I'm not going to go through all of them in great detail because I'm going to use some examples where I'll likely be able to explain these and how you use them a little bit better. But there are some that I wanted to pick out for you. And you can see that they're different colored. So on the left side, these are numbers, or at least categories of numbers that are based on your performance. And then on the right side, these are contributions you can still make, but they really impact the team. And again, from the left-hand side, 0 day, that's really the sense of urgency. And again, I'll go back a little bit more detail. The 70% solution, or is really making a decision when 30% of the information is still out there. The rule of three, simplifying, control. And what I also like about it, the rule of three is the exponential value. And what I mean by that is, for example, if you train 3 people and they train 3 people, and then those 3 people of the subset of 3 people train 3 people, it becomes exponential. And that happens a lot in the military. And the business world begs for that and begs for examples of that, and really begs for people that can do that, right? On the right hand side, we've got 15% growth. And some of these may be new numbers to folks. So let me go into a little bit more detail about the 15% growth. Companies in the business world, if they target that 15% growth and they hit it, they're able to pay for bonuses, they're able to pay for innovation, R&D, they're able to subsidize capexes or investments in, refurbishment of systems, all kinds of things. The reason why 15 is, a great target is if you use the law 72, it's roughly 5 or 6 years, I think, of where that falls in, right? You divide the 72 by 15 to get how many years it takes to basically double in size, right? And a lot of companies exceed that, and you'll see them doubling in size and so forth. But that's important because if you're a shareholder, that means that company is doing the right things, right? But it also, as an employee, you know that you're part of a company that's growing. And if it's below that, it's not necessarily bad, but strategies are usually put forth to hit that 15% growth. Net are the present value of money. And what I mean by there is the simple definition of this is $1 today is worth more than $1 tomorrow due to inflation, due to other factors in the macro environment. But this goes back kind of the sense of urgency about what the company is investing in. And this last one, quick ratio, which again, I'm not going to go through a full financial explanation, but quick ratio is essentially cash plus marketable securities plus net accounts receivable, all divided by current liabilities. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are like, holy smokes, you just dropped a formula on me and now my brain's hurting. Mine does too. But the reason why I put this one out here as a very critical number is that, one, if you commit yourself to learning about the quick ratio, and it's one that's used often, you'll find out a lot more about your company by just looking and asking questions about the components of that, right? And in general, what the quick ratio is used for is to determine how much of the debt of the company can be paid for by actual assets. What that means in layman's terms is you can identify whether or not your company is doing good or doing bad. And if you get at least savvy enough with it, you can find out how your division or how your group that you're leading can impact that, both good and bad. So again, there's a lot more components of it. And the real takeaway from that one is if you ask those questions to the right folks, you gain access to a totally different conversation that sets you up. If you ask those questions within your interview, again, that sets you up. So again, I'd say get familiar with these, and these have been pretty time proven. But like I said, great, a lot of explanation. I'm sure I heard some people with throwing out a whole bunch of descriptions and definitions. So let's move on to the application, right? Because that's where, again, I like to put these. So let's go back to this diagram. And again, you're saying, hey, if that was your quick sheet and you could share that with folks, right? Why would it be important? So the 0 day, again, is for you, right? Acting as if today is the big day or the tough decisions or decisive actions need to be made today, right? Jeff Bezos at Amazon empowers his people for 2 level decisions. The first level of decision is, can you make a decision on something that's not reversible? Meaning that if you make the decision, it's go, you can't take back what you did. There's no correcting it. The level 2 decision is you can take it back. So guess what? If you go in that direction, yeah, you may be scolded, but you can reverse it, right? So again, that 0 day, that sense of urgency. And I think for a lot of military veterans, especially myself, I always feel like I'm living on borrowed time. I've been fortunate to make it out of the combat zones, make it out of, certain situations that I never thought I would. But I also know folks that didn't. And, with the life that I have remaining, I really do look at it as, what do I do? How do I contribute? How do I make it better? When those that I couldn't or weren't afforded the opportunity, right? The next one is 70% solution. So, for somebody that had, 130 annual projects, they had to make a decision to move forward with that. That's a number that stands out to me that would be high. And again, for simulation purposes, it probably is high, right? But if you can explain that, right, then that's really the power here, right? These are strong numbers that you project to other folks, and this should resonate with them. And then the rule of three, right? I don't think one person is just managing 3.7 or $13.7 million. So then when they ask questions, or when you get asked of this, whether or not, again, it's networking or interviews, you have a response for that. You're telling them the story and how you're managing other folks and how that's become very successful, right? Now, this is your contribution to strong team numbers as part of the team. And you talk about the 15% growth, right? And if you're managing that and you share that in your numbers, now that's a direct alignment to hiring managers, hiring directors, hiring executives that go, all right, the components of that. They may ask you further questions for clarification, but that should really resonate along with present value. And this takes a different form. You can see the bullet point here. This would be an investment. So again, not exactly you're just saying, hey, I know present value. This is an investment that if you made today to automate processes, that it would cost you more in the future to do that same automation. So you made the choice to do it now. And then quick ratio. This one doesn't have a number with it, but again, you're begging them to ask you the question because you put on there that you can manage P&Ls and profitabilities. And again, I think that opens quite a few more doors when you have responses or questions with that you normally wouldn't have if the conversation doesn't go that way. Now, these two areas that I've just covered, right, are often key interview hit items that if you bring up or the interviewer brings up, you're just checking off the boxes, but you have such more depth with those strength and numbers, right, and the story behind them than others. And again, I think that sets you far apart from anybody else in the pack, right? And it shows that you can drive focus with your actions. Now, when we talk about finite numbers, remember those were, the team is known, the players are known, the time, the end game. Businesses really like this because, again, they can grow revenues, increase throughput, and decrease expenses, right? Again, that growth is grow revenues. You can tie it quickly to that, right? Decrease expenses. Again, these usually come in savings, but they can also be decisions that moved away, certain expenditures, outsourcing, and so forth. And the last one here, increased throughput. Again, that may be tied. So you can have multiple items, and I wanted to show this an example, multiple themes tied to there. And that, again, that produces the depth. You can take that bullet point of those numbers in any direction. And we've covered actually in the past two main areas, the PAR, the problem, action, results, right? Where we show what was improved by how much and who benefited from it, right? And where. And also the CAR. I actually like this one. I think this was a spinoff by Alan, but the crisis action result and how people really felt afterwards, right? So again, this becomes very good proof. But then we can also tie in the infinite numbers, right? And these infinite numbers, I'm talking about legacy, congruence, relationships, right? The number of awards, the number of years of experience because you've committed to being in a certain vertical or a certain skill set or so forth. And then the relationships, right, that you're garnering and fostering because you know the power there, right? This is really good for your brand, right? And they show that you're passionate about a certain, this is your story. These are the easiest for you to share where you know it, you lived it, and I would say that when you're doing this, just be mindful to keep this clear and concise because you have it set up right then and there. So, that's really the key pieces of applying it. And then one of the great things about Eagle Group is that you don't have to do it alone, right? So strength in numbers really means being part of a team that's striving for success, right? So you can see here, a lot of us remember defilids and areas of fire, fields of fire. Also, the degrees in which someone can actually monitor, right? And again, one of the key things here is that you don't have to become an expert by just watching this presentation. You can always use these components and say, hey, that one piece I don't have clear, you can bounce that around folks, work on how you're delivering, what story is cool. And most often I do this a lot with folks in the Eagle group is, hey, does this, I just try it on for size, right? And I go, you know, if I said that to you, would you feel comfortable recommending me to somebody else because I sound like I know what I'm talking about, right? If they say no, then it's back to the drawing board. If they say yes, well, now I've got something and I work on a couple more, right? And have my grab bag ready to go. So again, strength in numbers. I know it's a little bit of play on words. And again, you can look here, a buddy team if you're moving quickly in the finite world, a 360 if you're just trying to, again, catch everything that may be coming with you. And the last thing I'll leave you with is that these have been life-changing for folks. And again, I take this opportunity to share with you very passionately. Folks have communicated back to me that this has just made it clear for them not to share just a bazillion numbers. It also made them clear to understand where some of these numbers came from and some of their passion. And by working with others and refining that, it's really strengthened their voice, their position and their brand, even before walking into those conversations. They can have a networking meeting and they leave and the person's like, man, I got to introduce you to this other person, right? They leave an interview knowing that they put their best foot forward. And folks already in jobs, during their mid-year and end-year review, really look forward to it because they know that they're going to go in there and really place it on their boss to make some tough decisions about what they do with their stellar star. So with that, let me go to the last slide, and hopefully I made this one shorter than my last presentation and open it up for questions.